you very much, Amanda. I appreciate the invitation to join your group tonight and want to make sure that everyone knows this is going to be a very relaxed and interactive session tonight. So I want to make sure that if you have the ability with your Zoom setup tonight, that you're capable of maybe having a second screen to visualize me and the screens that I'll be sharing, but also to possibly follow along. So I'll be giving instructions about where to find data on soil moisture or precipitation or other items that relate to monitoring drought. And of course, answering your questions with regard to drought impacts, in particular, what we experienced this past fall. So thank you so much again. And what I'll start by showing you or screen sharing with you is the landing page for Drought.gov, which is our nation's drought information portal. So let me get a verification from Amanda that you can see my cursor moving on that screen.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if you guys would like to, again, if you have a smartphone or multiple screens tonight, feel free to go ahead and type in and pull up the landing page for Drought.gov. You can type that into your search bar and this page should come right up. And what I'll do today is give you a little bit background on that organization that I currently work for, which is the National Integrated Drought Information System. Quite a mouthful, but we are a part of NOAA. And I wanted to kind of show you what our scope of operations is currently and what we're planning on. Also, I'll have some time to, again, take a deep dive with you following along, taking a look at information for New York State and then Greene County, Delaware County, and Schoharie County. And then from there, I think we can just open it up to what you're seeing on the screen, maybe prompting some questions, or you may have some basic meteorological questions that you want to get answered tonight. I'm open to all of it. So let's go ahead and get started. On that Drought.gov landing page, I'm going to scroll down so that you can take a look at a US map with a lot of color on it. A lot less color in New York State as of late, but again, you can see that these are the current conditions as represented by the US Drought Monitor. Now, the US Drought Monitor is a tool, a very basic status awareness, situational awareness tool used by folks all across the country to kind of see where we are in terms of drought conditions. I will warn you, it is a look back. It is not always real time. What you're looking at is the drought update that was actually put out last week on Thursday. This map is updated by the University of Nebraska's National Drought Mitigation Center once a week on Thursdays at 9 a.m. And it does track, again, where we see the worst drought conditions in our nation, which right now are down in the Southwest US, and also allows us some functionality with figuring out what's going on in detail. We can definitely scroll down this page and again, refresh your memory or your experiences with looking at what the drought conditions and the colors represent. So we go on this map from gray areas, which is no drought or dryness, to the first group of yellow color, which is actually abnormally dry conditions. And then we proceed into the drought conditions, which go from moderate drought all the way up to exceptional drought. So that darkest red color is exceptional drought. And as you can see here, we're only seeing that exceptional drought again in the Southwest right now. Kind of makes sense. If someone's going to give a talk about drought, especially in a specific location like Schoharie County, there probably won't be any drought. It seems to be my curse that whenever I go in to specifically take a look at an area with a group of folks, there might not be very much to talk about, but we can certainly talk about some of the impacts that we saw last fall. So I'm going to continue to scroll down this particular page to let you know that every time you see a map from the National Integrated Drought Information System, you're going to have information below it. You can usually click a drop-down button that gives you an idea about when that map is updated on a routine basis. That's very important. So you can make sure you're looking at the latest data. Of course, the legend was there, but you can also click on buttons that give you a bit of a refresher. What exactly is the U.S. Drought Monitor and what does it mean? So that is the first thing that I wanted to share with you. And now let's see if we can navigate around again using your own computers, but also following along on the screen here. So you can zoom in a bit to the regions that we're going to be interested in talking about today. One of the first ways we can do that is by going to that section under Drought.gov over there. There's a blue bar that says Data and Maps. And you'll see a drop down of more information. And if you go down into where it says historical conditions and historical data, let me make sure that I'm sharing the correct screen here. Okay. So you should have easily available to you and under your cursor, historical data and conditions. And again, this is going to be for the full United States. And what we want to do now is go ahead and hover right over the state of New York, click on it, and it'll say load New York data. So Amanda, once again, just a confirmation that we've switched over to the New York State map.
Yep.
Great, thank you. So we've got a zoomed in picture here of our state. And you can see, again, there's not much drought going on. Most of the state is covered with a little bit of yellow, which again, the legend indicates to us is just abnormally dry. If you go down to the extreme southeast, right on the border with New Jersey, there's a little bit of an increase in drought. You see a little bit of D1, moderate drought, and a little bit of D2, just a small pocket of D2 severe drought. And those will be the conditions that we are constantly keeping our eyes on. Is it expanding? Did the precipitation that we've got in the last 2 days pass over this area to give it some relief, at least at the surface? But as we go through the talk tonight, you'll be able to see that drought is a concern, not just at a surface level, but also hydrologically below ground, as well as stream flow on the surface itself. So now that we're in New York State, I'll hover until I find Schoharie County. And if you like, you can definitely load the data for the county and zoom right in. Not very interesting. Again, we don't have much to talk about drought-wise, but that's just the current U.S. Drought Monitor. So basically, right below that map, you are able to see a timeline. And we can take a look back all the way to the year 2000, which is when they started producing the U.S. Drought Monitor, and take a look at the times when there were dry or low-level drought conditions. Your cursor can even hover over certain parts of the graph to give you a more detailed look. The other thing that you can do is if you go to the top of that map, we can look back a little bit further in time. So you click on the 9-month SPI, Standardized Precipitation Index. It's an index that we use to calculate from temperature and precipitation what has occurred in terms of drought conditions that match that US Drought Monitor set of categories. And right now I can move my cursor around, and let's say I want to stop it. It's somewhere around January of 1965. And if you're doing that on your own screen, I think you can see some drought for Schoharie County. So it should be a bright red, which was that D4 category of drought. Or a fun game that I sometimes play with school kids that I work with. I ask them to pick their birth year and go ahead and use that cursor to slide around and take a look. Do you see a lot of blue? Was that a wet year? The SPI was in the wetter range? Or do you again see a lot of drought where you have your SPIs indicating reds, yellows, and up to the reds? So that's just a fun way to take a look back. And we have been able to calculate these SPIs back to 1895. And that's, again, just based on our temperature records and that generally go back that far. But just for fun, if you'll go to the top of that map again and find where it says paleoclimate data, click on that tab, and you may have to zoom out. The map does have a plus and a minus, so you can zoom in and zoom out. You'll have to zoom in a little because the data gets a little more pixely the further you go back in time. But this is kind of fun because we do use tree rings and soil samples, core samples, rocks to give us, again, some idea of what the climate was like going back hundreds of years. And that same scale or time scale is there, so you can slide around to various times, like maybe the colonial era back in the 1600s, or during a time in the early 1930s when there was probably drought in, say, the great drought that occurred in the middle portion of the US. What was it like in Schoharie County? At least with that data. So the summer of 1935, maybe, let your cursor slide around and kind of see where that is. But basically, again, all of that information is available, again, both not just on the dry side, but on the wet side, which is hopefully a good tool, because in terms of the way our climate is non-stationary, or in a process of changing, it's important to look at both sides of the water equation: the dry side, drought, and the flooding side, the wet side. To show you a little bit more of the capabilities of the map tonight, and this is something that you can certainly look at on your own and play with. I'm going to go back to that first tab, or have you go back to that first tab, the US Drought Monitor 2000 to present. And at the very bottom of that map, there's something called go ahead and combine counties. So I'm well aware that we've got 3 counties that we really want to look at tonight. And if you click on where it says combine counties, by hitting the plus sign, you'll see state of New York comes up. That's where we want to be. And Schoharie comes up. And what we want to do is go ahead and click. You can see a full list, actually, of all the counties there. So what we're going to do is hit combine. And we're going to then look for Greene County by sliding around. Sorry. Greene County, New York. And something's going wrong. I'm going to do a reset real quick here. I'm going to select a state, New York, select a county, and I'll hit Greene. And we're going to select another county. Oops. It looks like we're having some problems on the site tonight. Let me try it one more time. I'm going to go ahead and select state and county. And nope, we are having trouble. Every once in a while, this happens when I'm doing a demonstration as well. We have a problem, but the idea is we'd be able to, when we're in that map and in New York State, combine the counties of interest, Greene, Delaware, and Schoharie, and get a slightly bigger picture of, again, the historical history. My apologies that isn't working tonight. So I'm going to actually go to another site here so we can
Sylvia,
take a
I'm
look.
not sorry to interrupt you. Someone did say that they were able to get it to work by selecting the state twice. So
Twice.
just so you
There
know,
you go.
so
Yes, it is functioning then. It's just me
yeah.
tonight. My apologies. And Amanda and I actually walked through this before we came on the air. So it was working a little bit earlier. But that's just an idea of the functionality of the tools that are available on Drought.gov. A couple of other things. I'm going to reshare a different screen. Excellent. And that one I think just came up. And this is a way of what I call quickly monitoring information that would be available. The bars that you see here highlighted in blue, the blocks, we always try to give quick tidbits of information. This is very helpful usually for media folks. They want to get some idea of what's going on in the state or county that they're looking at, and that has to do with some hard numbers. What percent of the US is in exceptional drought at a specific time you may be looking at on that timeline? Or how many people are affected by drought, a specific number, like 3.7 million folks in the state of Texas might be impacted by a certain category of drought. Those are all tracked usually at the top of the map. And let's see, I'm going to go hopefully here back to the landing site for Drought.gov and indicate again that under data and maps and current conditions, we have the ability to, again, zoom in to specific elements of what makes drought. So I'm going to slide down on this scale through those statistics at the top, and you should be able to follow along and see a couple of different maps, again, giving us an idea of what those current conditions are. There's that US Drought Monitor map for the country. If we want, we can zoom in, move it around, and allow it to reset, focus in on one state, or again, zoom out to get a more regional look. And we can also open up a different tab that allows us to see in 1 week, again, those US Drought Monitor maps are made weekly, what has the change been? And I think this is typically helpful for a lot of home gardeners, even maybe farm stores, trying to get a feel for how has the change happened. And again, the color coding on this map is pretty straightforward. Anywhere you see green, you've seen some improvement. Gray is usually, status quo. You could also, if you're more interested in tracking precipitation, move right over to the map just to the right. The 7-day map is displayed first, but you could almost actually take a look at, say, what's happened in the last 30 days or the last 60 days. Again, just to get a feel for that percent of normal precipitation that we've had. And again, I'd say let's zoom in on that 60-day percent of normal. Let's take a slightly closer look at the state of New York. And then you can even toggle back and forth and compare the differences just over a month to 2 months. So again, that bluish greenish area there that you see in the southeast area, right in the Schoharie area, you can see that again, we've registered, a decent amount of precipitation above normal. And that's going to help us with what we see on a couple of the next maps. So again, scroll down. We could take a look at temperature or some of the indices that we use to look at drought. This indice on the map on the right side is called EDDI, or the Evaporative Demand Drought Index map. We have that calculated out and gridded and mapped for both the 1 week and 4 week time frames. So basically, as you're looking at this indicator, we're seeing some areas that over the last week, when they calculate EDDI, you can actually see that drought conditions along those same colors that show up on the U.S. Drought Monitor can be depicted, indicating where drought potential is possible. And then if you want to get really deep into what's going on there, how is EDDI calculated? You can go ahead and take the time to click that Learn More and go to a set of descriptions and very detailed calculations on how we take a look at EDDI or calculate EDDI. Hopefully, we are right back to a couple of items called stream flow conditions and soil moisture conditions. These maps, again, are zoomable. So if you want to zoom right in, and again, I'm having trouble with my cursor. How's it going in the audience? Are you able to do a zoom function on the stream flow conditions?
I was able to zoom in.
You were able to? Yeah. Maybe I need a new battery in my mouse because I'm having some hit and miss efforts here. But stream flow, both in real time, which is the first tab you see. Let me see if I can switch. I can't switch to 28-day or almost a month. It's important for us to monitor stream flow, and that is a part of determining how significant the drought actually is. And I am getting a message that my web page is not responding very well. It may move around kind of quickly here. There we go. Now I can finally hit my 28-day stream flow map and zoom in or not. My apologies, everybody. I'm having some trouble with my mouse and my maps, but hopefully, since you're following along with your computers and smartphones, you're able to take a look at the differences between real-time stream flow, and that's surface water flow, and the 28-day stream flow. And that's really important because we have to look at the precipitation that we've gotten, not just in real time, but over various time frames, a week, 28 days, sometimes even when you have agricultural interests, it's important to look at the hydro conditions over a 3-month or 6-month or a year's time frame. So some of that information is available there. On the right, there's some what we call our soil moisture condition maps. The two that we favor are actually from NASA. One is the NASA Sport map. And if your computers are, yes, finally I've got my mouse working a little bit better here. You can zoom in to take a look at what the satellites are seeing in terms of calculations that are done that give an estimate of soil moisture content. And that's in the closest surface layers, 0 to 100 centimeters. And they map that so that, again, blue is indicating some pretty decent soil moisture percentiles. About the only areas in the state of New York now that seem dry are up in the extreme north. And let's see if we can zoom in here just a little bit more. Maybe down on the Long Island area there, we can see some areas where the soil moisture is just a little low, indicating, again, maybe they've seen some hit and miss showers, but maybe not gotten some of the rain that we have experienced elsewhere in New York. So hopefully I've given you an idea by cruising through these current conditions, a way that you can get information on specific states. And again, once you go to the state level, specific counties, let's look at Delaware County there. And let's just zoom in on those stats. Not too much to worry about at this point. And all of this as a quick review. Zoom in and zoom out to get regional perspectives of what's going on. And then get additional information on things like stream flow. We're able to really zoom in here and see that the blue or much above normal stream flow conditions are prevalent, both in Schoharie with, looks like we've got, let me get the legend in focus there, some actually high readings on our stream flows. I think I see one little red dot here in Delaware County. I'm not sure if that's representing, that could be a bad data point. That's something we watch for in our data. Maybe there is a stream flow gauge that isn't reporting, because it does seem rather odd that there's this one small area that has what looks to be low flow in process. In the wintertime, we almost expect to see a lot of that when gauges become frozen and not reporting correctly. But again, there's lots of options to take a look at precipitation, 1 month precipitation outlooks, more data on what we call some of the cascade effects from drought. When we're looking at situations like we had last fall, where we had a lot of dryness and we had basically the leaf drop began to fall and then dry out and collect, and then any kind of a spark that happened, a random burning fire ember, maybe a chain on a moving vehicle making sparks on concrete or the road surfaces could set off that dry underbrush. We then have what we have called cascade effect that relates to drought. So basically you have a situation where you have abnormally dry drought conditions, then you get a lot of leaf debris in forest areas, the duff dries out, and then you get fires. But then from the fires comes the next cascade, which could be health issues, in particular air quality. So we do try to make sure there's a way on Drought.gov of monitoring the air quality in an area. I believe when we had the fires in Brooklyn, New York, last year, most of the wind patterns had the smoke from those fires blowing into Connecticut. So at that point in time, there were some issues with air quality. Again, just an outcome or a cascade effect from drought. And of course, that affects everything from folks with respiratory illnesses struggling a bit more to folks with cardiovascular illness. So we are working with the folks I used to work with in my previous jobs, very much related to public health and human health effects from drought and wildfires and smoke. So we do try to monitor all of this. I believe currently we're looking at some good to moderate air quality in our area, no fires right now. But again, keep an eye on this page if anyone in your family does have issues with, breathing issues, respiratory allergies even, particularly when we do have drought conditions or wildfire in the area. So I think we're at the point where I want to stop sharing and give everyone an opportunity to start to ask questions, either about the data that you could scroll through on your own or what you saw me demonstrate. And again, forgive my mouse for not being totally functional. I hope you're able to combine those county maps on your own and play with them and map things differently. Ask questions about the previous fall's drought, outlooks for the near future, things like that.
I guess I have a question myself while everyone thinks, but yeah, I guess related to last year's drought, that came on so suddenly in our area. I feel like when we think of um, emergency preparedness, we're really thinking of flooding more so
Mhm.
than drought and wildfire. How likely do you feel it is that we'll experience more of that as we move forward, or
Mhm.
um,
Let me see if I can find something that'll help speak to that just a little bit in terms of uh, drought outlooks.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go ahead and grab this map and put a link in the chat as well. Hopefully this goes to everyone. And this is a link to the U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook. And I'm going to click on that map when it comes up. And then I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen here. So what you should be seeing is the U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook. And again, just checking the dates to make sure it is valid for the 1st of May through the 31st of July. It was produced and released on April 30th. So this is about a 3-month look forward to see what we can expect. The legend's down here on the right. And this is produced by NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. So these are not the meteorologists, but more the climatologists who are looking at seasonal averages as well as current weather to come up with what you see depicted in brown as drought persisting, drought remaining but showing some improvement or amelioration, drought removal, meaning complete removal of the drought area, and yellow is highlighted as going in the wrong direction, drought development. So for our area on this map, we can zoom in just a little to see that maybe just below the 3 counties that we're looking at tonight, or possibly involving 3 counties that we're looking at tonight, we're in that area that matches with drought removal being likely. And that is consistent with what we're seeing in terms of precipitation expectations in the next few days and in the next few weeks. But there are some areas in there of that color. It's kind of a lighter grayish brown. Drought remains but improves. So some gradual improvement to those conditions that we saw on the U.S. Drought Monitor over the next 3 weeks. And you might say, well, how does that work exactly? What other pieces of information are the meteorologists and climatologists looking at? And I'll show you with these maps. And again, just one more link in the chat. Kind of easy to get there. So every time we start to think about drought, we think about the basics in drought. We think about precipitation or the lack thereof. We think about temperature, particularly if it's temperatures that are very warm, because warm air masses over the surface area typically promote what we call evapotranspiration, or the idea that the atmosphere is literally sucking the moisture out of not just the ground, but everything around it, the trees, the tree leaves. So that idea that we're constantly monitoring both temperature and precipitation is very key. And I will go ahead and screen share a couple of maps that do just that. Again, from the Climate Prediction Center, taking a look at, let's look at, first of all, the 6 to 10 day, and this is kind of small to look at here. I'll try to make it bigger. The 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. So I think we did see some areas here, particularly in the red, where we expect above normal temperatures over the next 6 to 10 day period. More warmer conditions that are going to have higher evapotranspiration rates, suck away some of that wonderful moisture that we want to keep in the soils and keep on the ground and percolating down into our groundwater. We're going to get a little warmth. And so that will mean that maybe there are some areas of drought that are going to persist or not improve very rapidly. And I think we can back up and then take a look on this page. Are you seeing the 6 to 10 day precip outlook now? Yep. So it looks like if you zoom right into Southeast New York State, we're on the edge, or actually maybe more in a bit of a gray area there. So if we go down to the legend, near normal precipitation, right on the edge of that lightest green color, which would be leaning to slightly above normal precipitation. But again, recalling what's going on in this area temperature-wise, with more warmth expected in that 6 to 10 day period, it's going to be a tug of war in the atmosphere about, is it pulling out enough moisture to continue the dryness, to have it persist, or is it going to kind of be in a status quo type situation? So hopefully we can go right back to that first set of maps. And you can see there 6 to 10 day outlooks are there, 8 to 14. Kind of depends on the time frame you're interested in for whatever activities you're doing or what business sectors you might be working in. The ag folks deal with slightly longer. Agricultural interests want to know, what do I need to plant today that's going to have enough moisture to grow 3 months down the road when the plant's really developing and trying to get a lot of moisture. The 3 to 4 week outlooks might be more useful from our Climate Prediction Center. So again, we have a temperature outlook. Looks like we're in an orange area of maybe 60 to 70% probability chance of above normal temperatures. Let's go and see what they say for precipitation. So we are distinctly in a light brown area, which would be looking for a 50 to 55% chance of below normal precipitation for this 3 to 4 week time period. So that would be between about May 17th and May 30th. And then one more trip back to that main menu. Let's look at the 3 month material. You can take a look at what's expected. Let me see, in the 3-month time frame. Okay, I think I have that up now. Seasonal temperature outlook for, oh, still warm, above normal. And again, this is more of a May, June, July time frame. And 3-month outlook, precipitation. Well, maybe we're getting into some slightly higher chances for precipitation. So again, if you go back to that seasonal outlook drought map, that's some of the data that they're really looking at to give an idea. Interestingly enough, for our area and the Delaware, Greene, and Schoharie counties, what we've watched, say maybe over the last 5 years, is we'll get a lot of good precipitation at the surface. So again, we may have some good stream flows, but hydrologically, the groundwater could still be challenged from previous years of dryness and drought. So that's the aquifers where, you know, our for those of us on wells, you know, you might want to keep an eye on your well level if that's possible, because again, when you have situations like last fall where we were so dry, a winter where we haven't, you know, gotten a lot of snow, and then the snow melts, we, you know, typically during the winter, once we hit spring, it'll percolate right into our groundwater, refill those aquifers, recharge our wells. But that's not really happening lately. We've had a couple of winters of low snow as a whole that are going to maybe compromise some of that groundwater refill. And again, those US Drought Monitor maps are including what are we looking at? And again, this is from our partners at the USGS. What are we looking at with regard to our groundwater recharge and our groundwater levels? So hopefully, I've talked a lot there. Hopefully that kind of answers some of the questions that were asked. And let me try to pull up one more thing.
I'm not sure if you
About
had a chance to see the question in the chat here.
uh-huh.
Doug says, I know after drought and forest fire, there's a risk of mudslide. Is there a way of
Yes,
looking at mudslide risk on the websites or assessing that somehow?
not just yet, but and again, I'm going to go to a map, which I hope is helpful. And it's going to take a while to come up here because there's a lot of data on it. But to focus on that question in particular, it's more easily observable and certainly something that's watched for in places like LA. And we heard what happened there. They literally had conditions of abnormally dry, D0 and D1, which was rapidly escalating earlier this year when they had their fires. It only took a spark. Even with those, it didn't have to be exceptional drought or severe drought, D4, D3. Literally just a little bit of dryness at the surface and they had fire. Well, because of the elevation changes in that part of the country, once the fires happened and literally denuded the land from the vegetation that holds the land and the soils together, the next time they got rain, there was instantly that concern for landslides. So you kind of have to have two things: that cascade sequence of drought and wildfire taking away the things that hold the land surfaces together, but you also have to have a change in elevation. So in areas where you have had those conditions in that sequence, you can likely have landslide issues. Not something that happens with our soils in this part of the country very much, but it's still possible, maybe on smaller scales as well. So here is a link to
Our, I think just west or for Doug's in Delaware County. So I think western Ulster County, part of the Catskills saw, I think,
Mhm.
a significant burn. Yeah, that is an interesting question. It would be interesting to see how much of that forest burned and how it's faring with the increased or the precipitation we've experienced recently. So we do
Sure,
get
sure.
our watersheds do see quite a bit of smaller scale landslides kind of on a regular basis. We have a lot
Small
of,
scale. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. So you're watching literally, sometimes you can see it with satellite photos, but not, it has to be the larger scale stuff that you see out west. You can literally see burn scars on the land. And that is what emergency managers, again, folks that I used to work with in various parts of the country, right after a fire, they would start to look for those burn scars. And if they were significant in size, again, that would be a good indicator that there's, again, nothing in that area that's going to hold that ground together. And the next time you get that flip flop in the precipitation regime, you get like 1 inch an hour or maybe 2 inches an hour, or heaven forbid, a tropical system comes through and drops 3 to 4 inches an hour. That's when you're watching those burn scars
Got it.
with
So it
that
may not
potential.
be something that's coming through on a website. It's not something we can track by looking at a map, but hopefully emergency managers are out there getting an eye on the whole scene there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Exactly. That's. I mean, the work that you do in terms of restoration on shorelines. You can probably keep an eye on the local area just by being out in the environment and looking and observing. Okay, so I saw a quick question pop in there. I did want to let everybody know our closest partners at the federal level are the U.S. Geological Service folks. And that link will take you directly to that map, which will let you look at things like the hydrology of the local area. Again, we saw maybe some good surface area stream flows going on, but taking a look at the groundwater is going to be key. And then keeping an eye on literally the history of the area in terms of where the fires were or weren't, where there's been, extremely heavy precipitation versus, a half inch that came really gently and softly. The good thing about the gentle soft rains is it's great for the surface levels, maybe 0 to 100 centimeters, but percolation often doesn't get all the way down to the aquifers and the groundwater where we really need them. We watch that very closely on Long Island because if we have any groundwater, any wells in certain communities on Long Island, they have to watch because they're so close to salt water. They're, particularly in geology that's further south on the East Coast, further, anywhere from New Jersey south, saltwater intrusion into wells can become a problem when those aquifers get very low during drought. And once salt water gets into your aquifer, it's kind of a mess. Hard to bring that water source back. You have to start looking at other sources for even drinking water. Or coastal environments often suffer during drought. Everything from oyster beds in Connecticut to even the fish catch sometimes near shore is affected by drought. See, is there a question now? I can't
No,
see the
I think we covered all of the questions that have been
great.
asked. Yeah.
Well, again, there's lots of sites out there. Did we put in the chat, Amanda, um, the link to what I always refer to in the Northeast as the backup to Drought.gov? That's the Northeast Regional Climate Center link.
Yes, I did drop that in there. And if
Okay.
any of the links that were shared this evening, I can also send out through email tomorrow.
Great. As many of you are aware, NOAA's funding and very existence to bring some of these tools to the public is under threat right now. We quite honestly don't know if we're going to have a NIDIS program after the beginning of the new fiscal year, which is the 1st of October. And in that case, it would be sad, but I always like to tell folks in our area that if you have a backup, you have the Northeast Regional Climate Center, and they have the link that was shared is to their drought dashboard. So again, just another way of obtaining some of the data that you saw on Drought.gov, at least for our region, the Northeast. The NRCC covers everything down to about Northern Virginia, West Virginia, and the Delmarva. So there's quite a bit of backup information on drought on some other sites. And that's not always true across the country. There's some areas that don't have those climate centers where the data is being maintained, or where maybe there's a functional drought dashboard specifically geared to the products that you need to monitor drought. But we're going to try our darndest to make sure everybody stays aware of what's going on.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, wishing all the best there. I think we're coming up on 7 o'clock, and we have no more questions here. Wrap it up.
Probably just in time for me to go get a new battery for my mouse.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah,
always goes wrong, but great.
just how it goes. I think this was wonderful. Thank you so much for taking your time and for sharing all of this information with us. And yeah,
You
being
are
here.
very welcome, and thank you to everybody out there. I did put my email in the chat early on. So if some questions or thoughts come up, please feel free to email me.
We'll do. Thanks again. Really appreciate you. Take good care.
Have a good night, everybody.